Hey everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT. I am with my co-founder, Dan Frankel. We're talking about all things telecom, media, and technology. This has been quite the week. If you think I'm looking like I'm sweating, it's not just because I'm talking to Dan, who always makes me nervous, but and it's not because I've been trudging
I
through the
have a
desert
fact on that.
with AI Donald Trump. It's because I made a fantastic pasta sauce tonight that used some very innocent looking yellow peppers picked up in a box that said free in front of a neighbor's house a couple of blocks over. And I thought, oh, what could go wrong? And I'm flushing out every toxin in my body. So we'll be in great shape to have a fine conversation about all the things that are going on, starting with, as I sort of foreshadowed, that very amusing, very inappropriate, wildly well-timed, memed everywhere South Park episode, the first of their 27th season, that ran hours after they announced that they'd signed a $1.5 billion deal to take their 26 previous seasons and what was it, 10 more episodes a year for the next 3 years. So Trey Parker, Matt Stone, both billionaires now and folk heroes, as demonstrated by their appearance this week at Comic-Con. What was your take on Sermon on the Mount? And that's an apostrophe mount, as in Paramount, which runs South Park.
It should have been anticipated, I suppose. Hadn't tracked the 27th season run-up for South Park in the contract renegotiations, but
good thing. It took a while to show up, right?
These are two guys that once imagineered a bomb diffusing in Hillary Clinton's private parts with stirrups and the whole 9 yards. They've been called brilliant satirists. And
well, Maureen Dowd called him that. So
Maureen Dowd called him that.
It must be true because Maureen
I don't
Dowd
know if it is. It's mildly amusing. You're kind of shocked when you look at it, like what the hell are these guys doing? But it had the effect of spitting in the eye of the president, one of the wags on his face, at the right time. I don't think it's as impactful as the prize they claimed, an entire broadcast network. They own CBS now. There's no more woke programming and no more bias on their news. And I mean, Walter Cronkite would roll over in his grave if he knew what was happening.
Well, anytime you talk about a president's teeny weeny and actually show it with eyeballs, which is apparently the price of getting it on screen in an AI fashion. Actually, I think that got a lot of attention. This is a franchise that absolutely Paramount needs to have matter for Paramount Plus, where it is now sitting. All that stuff was over on somebody else's streaming service, i.e. HBO Max. Now we call HBO Max again. It was sitting over there because back in the day, 3 or 4 years ago, Paramount was just licensing everything. It's like, hey, you got something you want? Let's make some money. Let's do a deal. Even if it's like
Yellowstone. You like Yellowstone?
Yeah, Yellowstone. That was a big one, and that's still not all the way over there. I mean, the fact that they spent $1.5 billion to get what should be an anchor, right? An anchor for that mountain of entertainment. Perhaps a foundational stone in that mountain.
Well, the White House says they're fourth-rate creators, and I think they use the word desperate. $1.5 billion doesn't really say desperate. It says idle and draws an audience to me.
It says we're one of you now. But what I thought was really interesting was really made a splash in the middle of all the bad coverage. I mean, the guys that helped make this call were guys like George Cheeks, the co-CEO under Sherry Redstone, who is now staying on under Jeff Shell to continue to help run operations. The people who made this call and let it go through after a lot of back and forth, apparently, did so knowing that there's all this really negative stuff about the company. And this actually provides a counterweight.
I envisioned a kind of obsequious conversation where Paramount or Cheeks or whoever tells Trump or whoever he has talking in the administration, listen, it was already in the pipeline. These guys do what they want. We've already paid them $1.5 billion. There's nothing we can do.
They have final cut.
We'll give you Colbert.
We'll give you Colbert. No, I suspect that what happened was Pam Bondi told Trump, oh, you're going to be in the South Park episode. And he didn't pay attention any more than the fact that he's in the Epstein files. And she told him that, too, back in May. So that's probably what happened. That's my guess. But all this being put aside. A, they actually now have back one of their crown jewels, which they needed to have going forward. It was smart of them to pay a lot of money, but to get a real, it's, I think, the 20th most watched show on television already. Not that specific
I'll take
episode.
60 minutes over SouthPARK any day. I mean,
well, you go for it, brother. I fall asleep watching 60 Minutes. My spouse is a loyal watcher, and it's like, God, okay, great. You guys go for it.
Leslie Stahl, Anderson Cooper.
Dude, I mean, they do fine work, but a lot of the stuff that they're doing is stories that I read about 3 months earlier. It's like, I'm glad you guys went in. He's been dead for 20 freaking years.
I know, I miss him.
All right, we'll dig him up. But in the meantime, let's just be serious. And now the other thing I thought was interesting was this actually provides a useful, I think, strategically important message to the employees, whoever survives the $2 billion in layoffs that are coming, to creators who might do deals with Paramount and all the other outlets that are part of the Paramount family, and whoever are non-Trump aligned viewers, that, hey, we're not all just going to roll over. And I think that's a really important message to send, because all the stats show that it's roughly 50-50 out there in the world, and it might be tilting to less than that given what's going on with Epstein.
Well,
and so,
the numbers I saw from Pew said it's a 50-37 world, but 53-37. Those are numbers released against our one and only president.
Well, but I'm talking about more generally in the election, very closely run, came out of that electorate roughly split evenly, roughly. And so the reality is some of this is going to, I don't know, Epstein's going to be a festering cancer on his butthole for a long time. And we'll see how he plays that out, if he can keep distracting. But that being said, what was important about this show was, to me, a couple of things. One, it sends an important message to a non-Trump audience that, hey, we're going to do stuff you're going to still watch. Even we're letting Colbert ride off into the sunset in 10 months because the economics are tough and the timing sucks.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't try a podcast.
Yeah, like he'll do a podcast, but
they couldn't do a streaming on Paramount.
You're dreaming. Like, let's do a podcast for a big broadcast network, the Tiffany Network. Let's do a podcast for this guy. Take him off the air, because that's just the same economics of two. They have $100 million budget. They have 200 employees. Let's do a podcast. That means you need
if you're paying him 15
people.
Million, how do you get to 40 million in losses a year?
Well, because of what you're bringing in with advertising. You have 200 million. You have 200 people who are getting paid well, and you have a $20 million host, and you're not getting your advertising.
Deployed him that were less cost intensive. He's still very in the 11:35 slot. Maybe not all of, because the very talented Greg Gutfield. I neglected to mention him.
You did.
But 11:35, he's the number one host. That's an asset. The fact that they just jettisoned it. I know it was a last week conversation. We kind of vetted it.
I know, and you haven't let it go. If you're losing $40 million, unless we got no
because it's bullshit. They're getting away with it, and it's bullshit.
You keep thinking somehow that losing $40 million a year on a $100 million business is a good business.
I don't think
that's what you're saying.
I think they're losing less than that. I think I'm not the one.
37 million. So it's like, that's a
Colbert himself questioned it. He has more access to the economics than I do. He has handlers that go over the spreadsheets, and he knows. I'm just saying,
we're
not political guys. Let's.
Here's the deal. Whatever the politics were, that I think it's a twofer. As I said, then it's not an and or. I mean, either or. It's an and. And the reality is, the economics suck. The other guy, Seth Meyers already lost his band. He couldn't afford a live band. I mean, come on. And all the other shows that are out there that used to be out there in late night are gone, so much so that they went.
I would just like to hear somebody say, we just need to do more with less. Like the crap we used to hear in newspapers.
Well, they're going to be doing more with less.
See other people suffering.
Well, they're suffering, and trust me, when Ellison starts whacking on August 7th, $2 billion out of that operation is going to be a lot. So we'll see what's left. But I quote at the end of the newsletter a little missive that a little prediction that Netflix made in 2013, 12 years ago, that the guys at Lightshed pulled up, and they said back then they wrote a long sort of prediction of where linear TV is going, and it will soon be dead. And we're there, and you may not like it with Colbert, and you may have fantasies about, oh, they could have just pivoted those 200 people to go run a $60 million podcast.
David, did you read the issue? If you look at like the global numbers, linear is far from dead. And it's
right. So Colbert can go to Zimbabwe, and he'll be huge. He'll be huge.
It'll always be Rhodesia to me.
It'll always be Rhodesia. That says so much.
I had to do a paper on Rhodesia in the 7th grade.
That says so much, and I'm going to leave it to you and the people who survived the terrible post-colonial leadership of that country. That being said, this was definitely quite the biggest attention for SouthPARK in a long while. I just thought it was well timed. I thought it sent some really useful messages. Will it be a forever episode? Yeah, kind of really, because it became a water cooler conversation in a lot of places in the time we don't do that very much. So mission accomplished. And they'll probably get people like my spouse is like, this SouthPARK thing is pretty funny. Let's watch some other episodes. And she is, let's just say, not the core demographic.
We had a couple of lunch today. We talked about, it was the topic du jour. Yeah,
you're
right.
So that's something. Now we'll move on because somebody needs to move on. Charter, you talked about had its share prices drop. I mean, the market continually befuddles me. Charter continues to do very well on lots of fronts in lots of ways, even as they're merging with Cox to become Cox Communications.
This is a telecom story.
They did great in picking up video viewers, but they didn't do as well on their broadband, and they got thumped by the market. Their shares went down. What's going on?
Well, we talked about this at length in previous iterations of this podcast in our newsletter. Charter is bundling ad-supported versions of popular streaming services like Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, Peacock, at no additional cost, or at least on the bill to subscribers. And it's a way to get your pay TV and most of the streaming services, say for Amazon and Netflix, that you want.
It's like it's about 6 or 7 services now. So it's most of the services you want.
Right. They even have Hulu. If you like the ads, they're soon going to offer a ad-free iteration of the bundle. But it's the ultimate bundle, and it's something that the industry has been talking about for some time. When are we going to offer that? It's expensive. It's over $100. Spectrum Select, it's called. It's that tier. But it's so far proving sticky. Charter, which like abandoned video a couple of years ago and stopped marketing it. Their flagship products were broadband and mobile. Brought video back into the flagship offering over the fall.
And they're definitely marketing it. I see those ads now, and they're definitely talking about it. We've got live TV, and we've got all of the streaming services you want. We've got sports and news. One of the things that the Lightship people said is not only did Netflix predict that the linear universe will go away, Rich Greenfield's point was, it's happening, people. Whatever you want to think about Colbert, this is the canary in the coal mine, or one of them. There's been several. And within a few years, what's going to be left is live on broadcast and news and sports that are live. That's what's going to still draw people to those outlets. And people are going to be seeking skinnier and skinnier bundles, even on places like Charter or Cox, as it will be called in 3 years, presumably.
Well, I don't know how skinny it is. It's a lot of programming.
It's coming at you in a different way. It's not a bunch of basic cable channels that
you're still paying a fortune for it every month. It's delivered in a slightly more consumer friendly way. I think people like.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, we do a lot of criticism of SVOD user experience, but I think for the most part, it's an improvement over where we were a decade ago, 2 decades ago. I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, better integration of that is pretty good. I mean, look, it's a better experience if you can access all kinds of programming. You don't have to go through this TV everywhere, fall to all, and blah blah blah, all the stuff that the industry tried to do.
Shot is a five-fold improvement in metrics. Charter lost over 400,000 video subscribers in the second quarter of 2024. They lost 80,000 in the most recent second quarter. And that's a five-fold improvement. That's, in the words of Craig Moffett, one of the top equity analysts, eye-popping. He's seen a few of these things and thinks it's important. So it's proof of concept. And I think you'll see a lot. You've already seen some emulation. DirecTV kind of is doing radical things with their tiers and their packages.
Right.
Genre theme.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are sponsored this week by Swerve Sports, which is focused on women sports, female-led sports, and doing lots of stuff that's not just, the WNBA Game of the Week on ESPN. They're picking up a lot of different, 8 or 10 things. I talked Friday, I believe, and in the video should be in our newsletter this week, with Steve Shannon, the CEO, Christy Tanner, who's the chairman and a really interesting person. Talked with her some. I think you were on camera with Christy during the Stream TV show in Denver last month. Lots of interesting stuff about how people, particularly younger audiences, consume sports, the sports they don't really care that much to watch all of are baseball games and soccer games, but they really like highlights, and women's sports definitely coming up. And there's a whole lot of stuff that hasn't made it on to ESPN, the app, or what Fox is going to roll out. So I think that's pretty important stuff. We'll see how they settle in and how they do. They have also stuff on combat sports. They have a separate channel on that, but women-focused MMA stuff is also on Swerve Sports. That feels like that's on the rise to me.
It's a smart play. I remember being at an Airbnb in the summer of 2014. It was hot as blazes outside. We were in the Sequoia area. And I remember watching the Little League World Series on ESPN. And I was coaching the game. It was kind of the right consumer to take that in. But that was sort of a breakout year. They had that young female pitcher, which became sort of a media darling. But you had audiences in the millions watching youth baseball. And that was kind of an epiphany that, boy, this really works on television. America is becoming more and more of a sports country. I mean, it's replaced the church in many ways in terms of a collective experience.
And this was only a year after Netflix said linear is going to be dead one of these days. So you were ahead of the curve on that, brother. You were almost as ahead of the curve as Reed Hastings, which is kind of impressive.
Steve Shannon and Christy Tanner were ahead of the curve. They realized that this is going to go fast. These rights are going to go fast. And not everybody can afford the NBA or even the WNBA at this point.
Right.
But you can lots of viable leagues. There's tons of very talented women's basketball players who graduate it's a small league, the WNBA, and their constituency athletes. I forget. They're working with a group that has softball leagues and basketball leagues and volleyball, and they're pretty high level. And I mean, ESPN. I was talking to a former baseball dad. His kid played at my kid's high school, and his kid is a college player too, and he's out there at some league that's out in the Appalachian
Pioneer League or something like that.
Right, some college league, and ESPN Plus picked it. These are big outlets doing big business with this stuff. Live sports,
absolutely,
it's gone way beyond the major leagues. And if you can acquire some good leagues and some good rights and catch on at kind of a good time in terms of recognizing that Gen Z is a viable audience, is underserved, that women's sports fans are a viable audience that are underserved, you can carve one hell of a business. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, I agree with that. You were talking about these leagues. I finished high school in Cape Cod, and the Cape Cod Baseball League is one of the best in the country. And I think ESPN actually showed it as they're doing like 50 states in 50 days or some excuse to fill a very light programming summer. But they mentioned Massachusetts, they mentioned the Cape Cod Baseball League, which brings in a lot of top talent to stay in people's homes, do a part-time job in the morning, and then go play baseball. And it's really kind of cool and a very community thing that's been going on for decades. So that's the kind of thing that would be perfect for something like Swerve Sports. These are guys, but something like that could really do something covering some of those games. The Hyannis versus Katuitt matchup or whatever, Truro versus Falmouth. Just a note to programmers. We did a slight detour over to Zimbabwe, one of your favorite countries where you've spent many years writing about the Rhodesian oppression and then Zimbabwe's post-colonial disaster.
Yeah, I just want freedom and access to low prices.
Low prices and over-the-air broadcast. It's interesting. What your point was that PwC put out a global look at stuff and suggested that even as late as 2029, ad revenues for broadcast worldwide will still exceed those of SVOD and online. And that's, I suggest, a function of the fact that it's really hard to run broadband into lots and lots of places that don't necessarily have a ton of money, don't necessarily have a ton of computers laying around. But if you can get any old damn TV that still functions and you can find a generator and you can stick a little antenna up, you can get local programming. Great. And it doesn't cost anything. Double great.
Talk about that in the run-up to their decision eventually to stop talking about metrics during earnings reports. And the language they used is limited by the addressable world. Not everybody has the internet. Not everybody has, those that do, not all of them have good internet. So that limitation will apparently be there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Netflix has struggled, as has Disney and Sony in India, the world's largest, most populous nation. Disney paired up with Reliance Jio. Reliance is a gigantic industrial combine headed by the richest man in Asia, which is saying something. But Netflix can't charge more than a certain modest number of rupees for a mobile connection. And a lot of those phones aren't great. A lot of those mobile networks aren't delivering a great network. I mean, a great video experience. Netflix will squeeze more value out of that than anybody because they've been doing this stuff for, 14, 15 years now to optimize on whatever quality network you have. But there's still serious limits there. I mean, you got 1.4 billion people, and if it's not cricket, they may not care. They may care about their various languages of Bollywood-style entertainment, but I got to pay for it.
That acumen. In the year of our Lord 2012, I think I started streaming more aggressively on Netflix. And I had at the time AT&T DSL, which was, I think it delivered 6 megabits per second tops, and I was probably getting half of that.
Yeah.
And that's not a lot of bandwidth to stream video. And it wasn't great. It was pixelated and often buffered, and we had some problems with it. But for the most part, it was viable. And the fact that they were able to deliver it over that narrow tube always impressed me. So
yeah. I mean, they squeeze more out of the bits they've got than just about anybody, and more power to them. That's part of the innovation that I think goes on under the hood.
Squeezing bits, I have some more to add to that charter discussion.
Okay.
One thing they did not do was grow high-speed internet. They have not had trouble doing that. By now, fixed wireless access, which is basically G cell phone internet for the home, was supposed to slow down. It didn't for T-Mobile. It peddled more new subscriptions or ads in the second quarter than it did in the second quarter of 2024. It's a lot cheaper than cable broadband, and it continues to undercut it in the marketplace. And subsequently, even though it had good mobile numbers and sort of eye-popping pay TV numbers, Charter dropped more than 18% Friday on the stock market. So,
which I think, and I'm not a numbers guy, but an 18% drop is a lot.
Yeah, it seems like it's double digits. So
it's almost like 1/5 of your, well, it's actually technically 1/6 of your company's value, which where I come from is painful. If you've got a few stock options in Charter, you're like, oh, okay, sounds great, Chris, let's fix this.
They're recognizing there's a problem. They have to become more competitive in the broadband area. The Comcast faces the same thing, and they're working on it. If you look at the metrics, it's like they're just They just bought them out, and they're turning the corner. I think eventually their quality, I've used both, and we've talked about it in this channel. FWA just isn't up to what cable broadband is. To stream your video and conduct remote surgery, which I like to do. I did a heart yesterday.
Yeah. I'm surprised that it's dropped so much, but they just have it. I think the challenge is just purely price. People see it as a commodity, right? And if it's 40% cheaper, fixed wireless, and it's on your phone, let's do that. Let's do that and see how it goes. Should be fine. And then all of a sudden it goes less than fine, and maybe you got to go back and pay more. I mean, you do. I'm surprised about the delta in pricing between the two, because cable should have an advantage. They already put that pipe in the ground. They already have coax across America that can carry high-speed broadband. And they're going to fiber. In my neighborhood, Frontier is installing fiber and knocking on doors. It's like, go away. I'm good.
Younger consumers especially like it. They don't like the service calls. If you can get something delivered, FedEx that you just set up in your house, which FWA,
you plug it in and go. Sure.
Yeah.
I get it.
So,
and for 40 or 50% less. And I think it's really price driven. The setup, Charter's gotten better and Comcast has gotten better about their setups, but I think it's really about that. We talked a little bit about sports stuff earlier. I would be remiss if I did not mention a couple of big bits of sports news that one of which involves our only president, other which involves one of our national religions, college football. The first thing, our only president served up an executive order as part of his, I believe, desperate efforts to throw anything in the way of people's attention spans to distract them from that little Epstein peccadillo. And it was saving college sports is what it was grandly named. So, but it's supposed to
hand with our war on colleges.
Yeah, right. So we're gonna extract $200 million from Columbia, and we're gonna keep Harvard. We're gonna keep Harvard from being able to have foreign students. But let's make sure Alabama's good on football. So it directs a bunch of the cabinet members to come back within 30 days with ideas, which suggests that they're not going to be deeply thought out.
Conversation with Nick Saban, who famously led an absolute dynasty at Alabama,
and then he retired, and now he's doing insurance ads.
Well, I think folks think he retired prematurely, and behind the scenes, he is fed up with college football. It's in a really kind of volcanic state right now. They're still trying to figure out how to compensate the athletes. TV money has made it insane, and it is in need of revision, regulation, smoothing over. What they have right now, I can't say that what they did for decades prior, having all these athletes build this giant multi-billion-dollar revenue base and not pay them, it might have soothed me, the sports fan, but it wasn't.
It was pretty exploitative, not quite on the level of Cecil Rhodes and Rhodesia, but that being said, not great. And we have now a landmark legal settlement that has some holes in it that are going to need to get worked out, particularly around the regulation of name, image, likeness money. This purports to wade into that thorny issue. I'll be really interested to see how much control this oversight body over NIL really has, or whether we just create a new black market for paying top-level students.
I like the impulse. Saban's right. It needs to be done, but a Donald Trump executive order, is it going to make that situation better?
It's unlikely to have much power other than a sort of vague threats to use Title IX or other things, use some of these levers, these cudgels to beat schools into submission or something, which seems to me to be a short-term, not long-term approach. So executive orders don't have that much power because they are not actually approved by the legislature or even the courts.
They can be rolled over in the day of the inauguration in 2028.
Yeah, you just let's say we're sports in a different way, so we can actually do it. But more than that, there's very limited stuff about what they're going to do. So again, it feels like, oh, here's a breadcrumb trail over here. Go look at that. Is what it felt like. So we'll see what comes out of that. But at the
Well,
same
I have
time,
another sports topic. I know we want to get to the NBC thing, and we should. But I had lunch today with my Canadian friend who was a little miffed. We talked about the MLB All-Star game last week and how well they pulled it off. Compared to the NFL and ABA, they've really got their fecal matter together in terms of an All-Star game. And we didn't mention the NHL All-Star game, which was sort of a nexus for nationalistic pride. The championship game pitted the Canadians versus the Americans, USA, USA, and was won by the Canadians in dramatic fashion. It produced the requisite caring about the competition that you want in an All-Star game and achieved the goal. And he was miffed. And I said, well, why didn't you put something in the comments? I think we should make our comments more engaging. A new feature in Next TMT called Rip Us a New One. We say something that...
I'm really not that excited about it, titling it that, because, people really don't need that much of an invitation to do that to me anyway. So it's like, let's not just wave the red flag at the bull as it's charging at me. He's like, here, right here, this one, back here, rip that one, go for it. It's going to be great.
Heard this things gently. How about that?
How about just a gentle reminder that there might be a different perspective on a specific given issue?
Boring.
Yeah, I pretty much prefer it as opposed to falling into the sinkhole known as X. But that being said, when NHL gets, 2.5 million viewers to the All-Star game, let's talk.
That's what I told them. But when your sport gets some ratings points, we'll
I love hockey, but I love it a lot more in person. The thing I wanted to talk about was not so much about NBC, though we'll get to that, but the Big Ten trying to shove through a proposal to expand the football championship playoffs from 12 teams, as it has just started doing. I guess was it just this year was the first year, and they want it, and they'll do it again, 12 teams this next year, but they're going to go to 16, and they're going to tweak it some other ways as they're sort of figuring out what works. But the Big Ten wants to guarantee that a quarter of the slots go to them, and a quarter of the slots, 4 each, are automatically going to the SEC and the Big Ten, the two best conferences, but also capable of a lot of crappy teams. And I think if you guarantee that fourth team getting in, it's going to be probably a mediocre team like a overmatched Indiana team that didn't play anybody. I mean, God bless Indiana. It was a great team last.
Oh, can I respectfully disagree with you? I watched them in the Rose Bowl last year. Now, UCLA wasn't great, but they weren't terrible. And Indiana was a machine before they lost their quarterback. They fell off when they lost their quarterback, but they were actually a very good team. I was very impressed.
And they didn't play a decent team for about eight games. And then they kind of picked up at the end of the season. They had to have a little more challenge, and they lost half those games. So, I mean, look, Indiana had a great story, fantastic. But does that mean you deserve to be in the college football playoffs because you dodged a lot of opposition? And I say that as a Missouri grad, which has as powder puff a non-conference schedule as you could possibly imagine. Our Lady of Desperate Mercy is, I think, the second game of the season this year.
Yeah. We got an offense coming up. They finally solved our quarterback issues at Desperate Mercy. I think a lot of people are excited.
And they've got a really tough outside rusher. This kid's going to be huge. No mercy from him. So that being said, but I mean, the point is they're
discussion because you've got a lot of different ancillary parts. You're talking about the formation of a real, in terms of the video business, a real pillar. That thing is going to be a massive audience draw into perpetuity once they get it built and once it works the right way.
It will lock down. Like if they do it through mid-December into that second week of January, that's going to just kind of own. Yeah, because there's all these bowl games now that don't mean anything. And I like the fact that they have them, and a lot of teams that aren't going anywhere can still go play, have a fun week, get a little extra practice in, get a nice gift bag, lovely gift bag, parting gift for their appearance. And maybe they win the game and they go off feeling good about themselves, and they're boosters go and party down and buy some steaks in some town they've never been in. I like all that. Some of those are, a lot of those games are really, really meaningless. And this actually provides an additional set of games that could, as you say, really lock down.
Well, I mean, you're talking about, it's a long tournament already with 3 rounds, which I think is what it requires to digest a 12-team format. And it goes to mid-January. You're already talking about the winning team. If you didn't qualify for the postseason, you stopped playing a month and a half ago. And that's an inequity in of itself. I suppose you have it in other sports leagues. The same paradigm exists in professional basketball. You're fallow for almost 2 months if you don't make the play.
Right.
But ostensibly it's academics and it affects the schoolwork, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about that. But there are, you look at, just look at USC. There's the biggest, the longest term rivalry there is, USC Notre Dame. And the coach at USC.
There are longer term rivalries. That's the biggest intersectional rivalry.
You're right. But it's a big time rivalry. It dates back to the 20s. I've really enjoyed it myself, and I know you have.
Yeah.
But it's in jeopardy, and part of the reason why is if Lincoln Riley, the USC coach, doesn't get his guarantee that there are 4 slots available to him in the Big Ten Conference, he doesn't want to play it because it's just more wear and tear on his team, and he wants to make sure he qualifies.
Right. Because he's going to get graded on going to the playoffs. And the Notre Dame game still matters a lot on the Trojan campus. Oh my God, does it matter a lot? Yeah, I mean, what are you getting your contract re-up on? That's the key.
And if you're not one of the bowls that brands one of the playoff games, you're like the Peach Bowl, the Holiday Bowl, or whatever.
I was thinking more like the Duke mayonnaise bowl, personally, but yeah.
I just wish, I think this is not a novel idea, but I do, and I think it's something Saban might have even suggested, a kind of 2-tier version where colleges that just don't want to play college football. I think NIL is here to stay. You're going to have to compensate the athletes, but what if they just played a pool and didn't differentiate? Every athlete who's on the team gets this much money, and nobody's competing for it. You don't see free agents through the transfer portal. And this lower tier bowl system exists, and it's like you make, let's say, the Holiday Bowl, just pulling that out there. It becomes the new Rose Bowl. It's the preeminent second tier for teams that still play college football. That is what you play for. I think a lot of programs, a lot of college administrators would say, great, we don't have to be in that big bonanza. We'll leave it to the Big Ten, the SEC and ACC. Those who want to play the lottery and spend all that money and delve into that very swampy area of sports and college.
We'll see how that goes, but I'll tell you right now, you've got teams moving up. Sacramento State, fine example, that's trying to caught on with the Mountain West Conference and trying to find a place to land, but they moved up from Division I AA, which was what used to be the place for people who just wanted to play college football. And a lot of those teams, like Liberty, they did what they could do to move up and be playing with the big boys, even if it was at the lower levels of the biggest level. And I think that that's an interesting thought. I don't know that it reflects some of the ambition and some of the drive and all those other things that and pride and overweening.
I'm gonna play for like the colleges. If you have talent, you're gonna try to go for the lights. There's always going to be
absolutely
a aspect of it.
Yeah,
right.
And where do your next generation of coaches come from? They come from the lower levels. And are you trying to win? Are you playing at a program that matters? Are you going to go to the program that's actually trying to overachieve? Right. So that's going to be a thing. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. But this 16-team expansion to 16 teams is still going on. The Big Ten is getting a lot of pushback. It is used to having its way. It is not getting its way because even the SEC is like, I don't know, which is surprising. But they don't want to shift from playing 8 games against their conference rivals to 9. Another one of these issues. But this is one of these things that Trump's order doesn't do anything about. It doesn't touch any of that. And that's why I kind of felt like that wasn't really useful. One of the things that Rich Greenfield and the guys over there at Lightshed said, let me just read this because I thought it was pretty interesting. Over the next few years, we expect virtually all linear TV programming outside of sports and news to shift to catalog content and reruns of what appeared on streaming. Outside of sports and news, there simply will not be a business model to support original entertainment programming on linear TV. That is both an important statement and one that Hollywood, collectively, the mindset, not
Right.
just the physical neighborhood, have not internalized. Part of what made the Colbert announcement so traumatic for so many, again, admittedly left-leaning residents of Los Angeles was that it was seen purely in a political lens. But the reality is this is going to hit everything. You put up a list of top 20 most watched shows. Tracker's on there from CBS, as is Matlock, the relaunched Matlock. Some shows you wouldn't necessarily expect, but increasingly those shows are going to come from Paramount Plus. I mean,
well, we already kind of got into that. Was another thing we've recently dealt with. If you look at broadcast's biggest hits, they get some of them. What is that ABC show that I'm thinking of?
You're talking about the Abbott Elementary?
That's
the one that gets Emmy awards or Emmy nominations. And
it's on the list. These shows that do best in the demo get most of their viewership from the second-day runs on the ancillary streaming platform.
Yeah.
Tracker gets a huge chunk from Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have what they have without that extended live plus 7 days, live plus 35 days, whatever. First 5 weeks, that's how Nielsen chopped it up this time to declare the season winners.
Right.
Broadcast is just a format that these things were created for, and they really it's just not really.
They're still kind of rolling forward, I think, on inertia. He said consumers will increasingly seek smaller/skinnier bundles of channels focused on broadcast networks, sports, and news. Makes you wonder why any investor would want to own the plethora of coming standalone cable network companies. As I closed out the newsletter, I said, good luck to Versant. Warner Brothers Discovery's soon to be spun off Global Networks, and whatever Ellison's going to call his future Viacom spinoffs, because they're going to be wandering the wilderness trying to figure out. You're going to get all your Schadenfreude as an ex-print dude out over these wandering in the desert. They're going to be looking a little bit like the end of Sermon on the Mount.
Comcast and NBC Universal this week talking about how they're spending now $2.5 billion a year to have the NBA again. Yeah. And they'll show that on Peacock.
Yeah.
But there's a certain segment of the audience, it's close to 50 million American homes, that still subscribe to pay TV. Many of those homes have viewers that just don't stream. My older brother, who he can stream, he knows how to, capable, but just chooses not to. He has just worn-in consumer patterns. He likes pay TV, likes the grid. He's been using it for a long time. That's how he likes to get down with TV. And that's not going to change. I think there's a lot of people that.
Well, it won't change for him, but he's your older brother, which probably puts him at early 60s.
What's that? Late 30s.
Your older brother is late 30s.
We're here for the marketplace. People want us younger. We got a lot.
We were more fact-based.
Yeah, but ourselves?
I freely admit my age when people ask, so I have no problem with it. The point merely being that he may be set in his ways as an old dude, but the folks who are deciding the future viewership of these channels are not. And those are the ones the advertisers want to reach, and those are the ones that are going to be transforming the business.
To finish the thought, NBCU is contemplating, according to the very serious Joe Flint at the Wall Street Journal, a launch of a linear channel, kind of counterintuitive at this point, to distribute to that audience. If you have sports assets, you don't want to leave them behind, and it's not.
You want to put them in as many places as you can where you can still make money. Is really what it is.
DirecTV, there's a sort of this movement toward these sort of more expensive sports fan tier pay TV offerings. DirecTV has, I think, called My Sports, which is a skinny bundle. This is where it would live. Instead of watching the NBA on TNT, you'd watch it on whatever NBC calls its channel.
But you're still paying for something. It's not quite a regional sports network. You're paying for something that has got a game of the day or whatever. Fine, great. That's just taking an asset and cutting it a different way for a different audience, which Hollywood's been doing for a little while now, maybe, I don't know, 100 years. And we'll call it 70 years since Disney went to Leonard Goldenson and ABC and needed to finance the Walt Disney,
Speaking of Hollywood,
yeah.
These sentences in this order were spoken in my house, my living room on Friday night. David Bloom was right. We watched The Studio on Apple TV Plus.
I'm feeling all Freddie Freeman.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
The kind of, the Kool-Aid guy meets Scorsese. I mean, that's brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
They
do a lot of tearing the hair out and yelling and running around like Michael Jackson in that Pepsi commercial, but it's a pretty funny satire of Hollywood when you can kind of.
I was in a show hole. I had finished all 5 seasons of The Affair.
Ta-da! It's like The Affair. We should be playing your beloved spouse and our beloved producer. Was not willing to put money down about how you would work it in, but we need to start doing The Affair bingo or a drinking game when Dan refers to a 15-year-old TV show that he finally manages to get through, but still needs to mention repeatedly because it's an ongoing shtick. So anyway,
it's not shtick. It's genuine respect for the creators.
It has totally fallen into shtick because you're talking about the last season too, and it's okay.
Just a little shark jumpage, still
shark jumping. Yeah, it was at least a dogfish jumping, man. So maybe a leopard shark.
What have we left unprocessed, undone? We didn't get into the death of Hulk Hogan, which was influential on the mass media.
Yeah, I mean, he helped make professional wrestling safe again for a broader audience. More importantly, it killed off Gawker, a problematic.
Well, he was kind of like the Zelig who did it. It was Peter Thiel, but in his money.
Thiel financed it, but he's the one that was offended by it as it started mucking around in his personal business. And Thiel financed that very expensive suit, which basically killed off a news organization, which I don't think is worthy of celebration, personally, even though I didn't think Gawker was particularly great. That was a precursor to all the stuff we've been seeing with, speaking of Paramount, speaking of kowtowing to people and billionaires in power. That was the predecessor that set the table for so much that has come along since. And so for that, I do not think Terry, whatever his last name was, who renamed himself Hulk Hogan and wore a lot of very skimpy T-shirts.
Remember my name. Don't have a podcast without knowing my name. Yeah, Beloa? Terry Beloa?
Yeah, it's below. I think it's something like that. Yeah.
I'm going to try to forget it as soon as I can because I think that set the news media back and freedom of the press decades, and that sort of put us through the hole we're in. So,
well, it certainly opened a new unfortunate chapter in anti-media litigation and attempts to intimidate people by basically killing off publications. So,
a Gawker writer who has talked about dancing on his grave, and I won't go that far, but this sort of public mourning, save it for Ozzy Osbourne. Another thing, it's like I was explaining to a friend, I liked Ozzy. His collaboration with Randy Rhoads was groundbreaking. He bit the head off a bat at the concert was like, when you're in middle school in the early 90s, which I was, it's like the ultimate boy mythology. Wasn't a huge Sabbath fan. Thought he was an excellent spokesman for heavy metal. Decline of the Civilization Part 2. I don't know if you saw it.
Penelope Spheris, who directed that.
Yeah, he was fantastic in it because he does this little prop where they ask him, "Do you think you have brain damage to the drugs?" And he's pouring some concoction and he kind of messes up on purpose. No, I think I'm fine. He was always a good deadpan, very charismatic, telegenic, by all accounts, kind guy.
Who also, speaking of media, was part of a groundbreaking reality show that turned his not particularly talented daughter into a star. Ozzy was perfectly fantastic at the thing that he did. It wasn't a thing that I cared about, but he was great at what he did. But the Osbournes became a very big show on TV. Again, one of these things that became a table setter for all that came after it. in that regard. He's another pioneer for the TV we're stuck with now, and the media
really strong connection to the audience is sort of this outsized presence. I was a little, Ronnie James Dio ascended to the sweet hereafter, and we didn't hear that. Where's Ronnie James Dio's week?
Yeah, we only celebrated it on the Sabbath, and a black one at that. So I think with that, we'll wrap up this Sabbath night conversation.
Well, I got more.
I'm sure you do, but we'll spare folks for the rest of that. I'm still sweating a bit from the, I think, Scotch bonnet peppers that worked their way in.
I'll say one last thing, and we'll get out of here. That commercial with William Dafoe and Catherine O'Hara, where the Hustlers.
The Michelob Ultra is pretty amusing. And they said, we're the young hot couples, like, well, just to warn you, we're pretty good. And they went,
we're high level, they say.
We're high level, and it's like
fascinating.
Which sounds like something a Bond villain would say, right? So that was beautifully done. So more props to InBev SA for that one. So anyway,
all right, more is less for Vivian, or less is more. I think she has to do this. I'll catch you on the flip side, Dave. Thanks for that.
That's good. Talk to you later.